Lesson 95. Race. Do you like to see two cars racing each other along the road?
No, I don't like to see two cars racing each other along the road.
Why not?
Because it's too dangerous.
Could you race me to the station and back without stopping?
Yes, I could race you to the station and back without stopping.
If you ran in a race against a horse, who'd win?
If I ran in a race against a horse, the horse would win.
Realize. Consequence. Rat. Ambition. Do you think that when a man murders someone, he really realizes what he's doing at the time and realizes the consequences of his actions?
Yes, I think that when a man murders someone, he really realizes what he is doing at the time and realizes the consequences of his actions.
Did you realize that in some large cities in the world, there are more rats than people?
No, I didn't realize that in some large cities in the world, there are more rats than people.
Have you got an ambition?
Yes, I've got an ambition.
What's your ambition?
My ambition is to travel the world.
Do you think you'll ever realize your ambition?
Yes, I think I'll realize my ambition.
Why?
Because I'm determined.
The pronunciation of ed in the past tense of regular verbs. Needed. Decided. Wanted. Tasted. When the past tense of a regular verb ends in ded or ted, how do we pronounce the final sound?
When the past tense of a regular verb ends in ded or ted, we pronounce the final sound id.
Give me some examples, please.
Included, lasted, etc.
Asked. Touched. Realized. Phoned. When the past tense of a regular verb does not end in ded or ted, how do we pronounce the final sound?
When the past tense of a regular verb does not end in ded or ted, we pronounce the final sound t or d.
Give me some examples, please.
Crossed, seemed, etc.
Lead, led, led. What does the verb to lead mean?
The verb to lead means...
What are the three forms of lead?
The three forms of lead are lead, led, led.
If I travelled north along the main road leading out of this town, where'd it lead me to?
If you travelled north along the main road leading out of this town, it'd lead you to Manchester.
If it were night-time and very dark, and we came to an old house standing alone in the country, which we thought might be full of ghosts, would you be willing to lead the way into the house?
Yes. If it were night-time and very dark, and we came to an old house standing alone in the country, which we thought might be full of ghosts, I'd be willing to lead the way into the house.
Why?
Because I don't believe in ghosts.
Would you say you'd led a fairly comfortable life?
Yes, I'd say I'd led a fairly comfortable life.
Eventually. Take care of. Break down. When we are talking about the future, when do we use the word eventually?
When we are talking about the future, we use the word eventually when we know that something is going to happen, but we don't know when.
Give me an example, please.
I will eventually be able to speak English very well.
Will it eventually rain again?
Yes, it'll eventually rain again.
When?
We don't know.
If you had a car and you didn't take care of it, what'd eventually happen?
If I had a car and I didn't take care of it, it'd eventually break down.
When a car breaks down, are you any good at making it go again?
No, when a car breaks down, I'm not any good at making it go again.
Do you think mobile phones will all eventually have touch screens?
Yes, I think mobile phones will all eventually have touch screens.
When we are talking about the past, what does the word eventually mean?
When we are talking about the past, the word eventually means after all that or in the end.
Give me an example, please.
He lived in different countries for many years, but eventually bought a house in England.
Supply. Do you have to supply your own pen and paper for doing dictations, or does the school supply you with them?
I have to supply my own pen and paper for doing dictations. The school doesn't supply me with them.
Do you know where this town gets its water supply from?
Yes, I know where this town gets its water supply from.
Sink, sank, sunk. Float. Drown. If you put a piece of iron onto water, would it float?
No, if I put a piece of iron onto water, it wouldn't float, it'd sink.
What are the three forms of sink?
The three forms of sink are sink, sank, sunk.
When did the Titanic sink?
The Titanic sank in 1912.
Do clouds float across the sky when it's a very windy day?
No, clouds don't float across the sky when it's a very windy day. They race across the sky.
Be on the safe side. Give me an example of the expression, to be on the safe side.
Let's catch an earlier train to the airport to be on the safe side.
Do you always carry an umbrella in winter just to be on the safe side?
Yes, I always carry an umbrella in winter just to be on the safe side.
Conquer. Do you think that one day in the future, one country will conquer all the others?
No, I don't think that one day in the future, one country will conquer all the others.
Tide. What's the difference between high tide and low tide?
The difference between high tide and low tide is that high tide is when the sea comes into the land and low tide is when it goes out away from the land.
Empire. Roman. Did the Greek Empire come before or after the Roman Empire?
The Greek Empire came before the Roman Empire.
Literary. Who do you think's the greatest literary figure of today in your country?
I think J.K. Rowling is the greatest literary figure of today in my country.
Govern. How is your country governed?
My country is governed by a democratic
Lesson 96.
system.
A few. Few. Feel sorry for someone. What's the difference between a few and few?
The difference between a few and few is that a few simply means not many, whereas few often expresses the idea of not enough or fewer than expected.
What do we mean if we say there were few people at the party last night?
If we say there were few people at the party last night, we mean that there were not enough people at the party, or that there were fewer people than we had expected.
Would you feel sorry for someone who said that they had few friends?
Yes, I'd feel sorry for someone who said that they had few friends.
Would you feel sorry for someone who said that they had a few friends?
No, I wouldn't feel sorry for someone who said that they had a few friends.
In this town, are there few good restaurants, a few good restaurants, or many good restaurants?
In this town there are a few good restaurants.
A little. Little. What's the difference between a little and little?
The difference between a little and little is that a little simply means not much, whereas little often expresses the idea of not enough or less than expected.
What do I mean if I say I have little milk in my fridge?
If you say you have little milk in your fridge, you mean that you don't have enough milk in your fridge.
Do you think you have little free time, a little free time, or a lot of free time?
I think I have a little free time.
Press. Control. Such. What am I doing?
You're pressing your thumb on the table.
What does this sentence mean? I had to press him for the money I'd lent him.
That sentence means that I had to keep asking him for it back.
Can we always believe everything we read about famous people in the press?
No, we can't always believe everything we read about famous people in the press.
Do you think there should be some control over what the press writes about such people?
Yes, I think there should be some control over what the press writes about such people.
Step. Step off. About how many steps would you have to take to walk from one end of this room to the other?
I'd have to take about 8 steps to walk from one end of this room to the other.
What might happen if you stepped off a bus while it was still moving?
If I stepped off a bus while it was still moving, I might fall.
Do you have to walk up any steps to enter this building?
Yes, I have to walk up some steps to enter this building.
Would it be a big step for you to go and live in another country?
Yes, it would be a big step for me to go and live in another country.
Bill. Come to. Per. Quarter. Pass. A law. Act. If a couple go to a restaurant together, do you think they should each pay half the bill?
No, if a couple go to a restaurant together, I don't think they should each pay half the bill.
Why not?
Because I think it's nice for the man to pay.
About how much does your phone or electricity or gas bill generally come to per month or per quarter, etc.?
My phone bill generally comes to about £25 per month.
What happens to a bill after it has been passed by Parliament?
After a bill has been passed by Parliament, it becomes an act.
Used to. When do we use the words used to, and what does it mean?
We use the words used to for a habit or repeated action in the past, especially when the action is now finished.
Give me an example, please.
I used to go to the cinema a lot when I was a child.
Did you used to speak English better in the past than you speak it now?
No, I didn't used to speak English better in the past than I speak it now. I used to speak it worse.
Did you used to eat a lot of sweets when you were a child?
Yes, I used to eat a lot of sweets when I was a child.
BC. AD. Christ. Lord. What do the letters BC mean?
The letters BC mean before Christ.
What do the letters AD mean?
The letters AD mean Anno Domini, from the Latin meaning after Christ.
Trial. When someone is on trial, do they have to promise to tell the truth in court?
Yes, when someone is on trial, they have to promise to tell the truth in court.
Is it wise to judge something before we give it a trial?
No, it isn't wise to judge something before we give it a trial.
Why not?
Because we could make the wrong decision.
Introduce. From abroad. What would you like to see introduced into your country from abroad?
I'd like to see more foreign food introduced into my country
Lesson
from
97.
abroad.
Not. Either. Can we use the words also, as well, and to in negative sentences?
No, we can't use the words also, as well, and to in negative sentences.
Which word do we use instead?
We use the word either instead.
Give me an example, please.
He doesn't watch TV or listen to the radio either.
Do you live in this school?
No, I don't live in this school.
Do the other students live in this school?
No, the other students don't live in this school either.
Can you speak Chinese?
No, I can't speak Chinese.
Can you speak Japanese?
No, I can't speak Japanese either.
Will you come here next Saturday?
No, I won't come here next Saturday.
Will you come here next Sunday?
No, I won't come here next Sunday either.
Definitely.
Tell me something that you know you'll definitely do next weekend.
I know that I'll definitely go swimming next weekend.
Adventure. Would you like to live a life of adventure?
Yes, I'd like to live a life of adventure.
Why?
Because it would be interesting.
Seed. What does a seed need to grow in a garden?
A seed needs water to grow in a garden.
Present continuous for the future. Arrange. Make an arrangement. What's the difference between we're going to go to the theatre and we're going to the theatre?
The difference between we're going to go to the theatre and we're going to the theatre is that we're going to go to the theatre communicates that it is our intention to go, whereas we're going to the theatre communicates that the visit has already been arranged. We already have the tickets, for example.
Have you made any arrangements for this afternoon or evening?
No, I haven't made any arrangements for this afternoon or evening.
Are you coming to school tomorrow?
Yes, I'm coming to school tomorrow.
Are you going away next weekend?
No, I'm not going away next weekend.
Do you know what she is doing after the lesson?
No, I don't know what she is doing after the lesson.
Ask her, please.
What are you doing after the lesson?
Bear. Bore. Born. What's another verb we can use instead of the verb to carry?
Another verb we can use instead of the verb to carry is the verb to bear.
What are the three forms of bear?
The three forms of bear are bear, bore, born.
Do you think you could bear the weight of this table on your back?
No, I don't think I could bear the weight of this table on my back.
What kind of things can't you bear?
The kind of things I can't bear are too much noise.
Who was the last child your mother bore?
The last child my mother bore was my brother.
What's the greatest physical pain you've ever borne?
The greatest physical pain I've ever borne was childbirth.
On. Upon. What's the difference between the words on and upon?
There's no difference between the words on and upon, except that the word on is much more common.
Whole. On the whole. Could you eat a whole chicken?
No, I couldn't eat a whole chicken.
Would you say that, on the whole, life was better today than it was in the past?
Yes, I'd say that, on the whole, life was better today than it was in the past.
Have you ever spent a whole week in bed because you've been ill?
Yes, I've spent a whole week in bed because I've been ill.
Possessive case for people's homes. If you go to stay at a friend's for one night, do you take a lot of luggage with you?
No, if I go to stay at a friend's for one night, I don't take a lot of luggage with me.
Account for. What does the verb to account for mean?
The verb to account for means to explain the reason for.
How do you account for the fact that fewer CDs and DVDs are sold these days than previously?
This is because more people download music and films from the internet these days.
Do governments usually have to account to the public for all the money they spend?
Yes, governments usually have to account to the public for all the money they spend.
Education. Do you think parents should have some control over the education of their children?
Yes, I think parents should have some control over the education of their children.
Northern. Southern. Eastern. Western. State. What are the adjectives of the nouns north, south, east and west?
The adjectives of the nouns north, south, east and west are northern, southern, eastern and western.
Name me a northern European country, please.
Finland is a northern European country.
Tell me the name of a southern state in the USA.
The name of a southern state in the USA is Texas.
Does the state in your country give free education?
Yes, the state in my country gives free education.
Is Russia a Western European country?
No, Russia isn't a Western European country, it's an Eastern European country.
Sign. Religion. When we fill in a form, do we normally have to sign our name at the bottom?
Yes, when we fill in a form, we normally have to sign our name at the bottom.
What kind of sign am I making?
You're making a sign which means come here.
If a man has rough skin on his hands, what is that probably a sign of?
If a man has a rough skin on his hands, it's probably a sign that he does physical work or works with his hands.
What is the sign of the Christian religion?
The cross is the sign of the Christian religion.
Dry
Lesson
cleaners.
98. Size. Take. What size shoes do you take?
I take size 7 shoes.
Stockings. What do some women prefer to wear instead of tights?
Some women prefer to wear stockings instead of tights.
Damage. If you borrowed a friend's bicycle and damaged it in an accident, would you pay to have it fixed?
Yes, if I borrowed a friend's bicycle and damaged it in an accident, I'd pay to have it fixed.
Violent. Do you think life is more violent these days than it was in the past?
No, I don't think life is more violent these days than it was in the past.
Navy. Would you like to join the Navy?
No, I wouldn't like to join the Navy.
Why not?
I think I'd find it boring.
Club. Do you belong to any clubs?
Yes, I belong to a club.
Are there a lot of nightclubs in this town?
Yes, there are a lot of nightclubs in this town.
Accept. Reject. Do you think a person should accept life as it is or try to change it?
I think a person should accept life as it is.
Why?
Because they'll probably be happier.
If you were walking along the street and a stranger tried to give you money for no reason, would you reject the offer?
No, if I was walking along the street and a stranger tried to give me money for no reason, I wouldn't reject the offer, I'd accept it.
Arch. Can you think of any famous arches in the world?
Yes, I can think of some famous arches in the world. Constantine's Arch in Rome, etc.
Rock. Would you jump into a river if you thought there might be rocks under the water?
No, I wouldn't jump into a river if I thought there might be rocks under the water.
How to make a question. How do we make a question with the present simple and the past simple?
We make a question with the present simple and the past simple by using the auxiliary verb do.
Give me some examples, please.
Do you want some tea? Did she see the film last night?
And how do we make a question with verbs that already contain one or more auxiliaries?
With verbs that already contain one or more auxiliaries, we make a question by putting the subject after the first auxiliary verb.
Give me an example, please.
Are you going to the party?
Now, I will say a statement and I want you to change it into a question. Michael can play the guitar.
Can Michael play the guitar?
Susan goes shopping on Saturdays.
Does Susan go shopping on Saturdays?
It will rain later.
Will it rain later?
George made a mistake.
Did George make a mistake?
This bus is going to the city centre.
Is this bus going to the city centre?
They should save their money.
Should they save their money?
We have to go now.
Do we have to go now?
They had been working for more than 2 hours.
Had they been working for more than 2 hours?
Matter equals to be important. Occasionally. What is the matter? No matter. Please. Taste. If we want to live a healthy life, Does it matter what kind of food we eat?
Yes, if we want to live a healthy life, it matters what kind of food we eat.
What kind of food ought we to eat?
The kind of food we ought to eat is fruit, fish, vegetables, etc.
Does it matter very much if we occasionally make a small mistake in our dictations?
No, it doesn't matter very much if we occasionally make a small mistake in our dictations.
Would it matter to you if you lived in a place with nowhere to go for entertainment?
Yes, it'd matter to me if I lived in a place with nowhere to go for entertainment.
If I suddenly went like this, what would you ask me?
If you suddenly went like that, I'd ask you, what's the matter?
Do you find that no matter what you do, you can't please everyone?
Yes, I find that no matter what I do, I can't please everyone.
Why is this so?
Because people have different tastes, ideas, and opinions.
Right equals entirely. What's the time right now?
The time right now is 7 minutes past 11.
What's the name of a country right in the north of Europe?
The name of a country right in the north of Europe is Norway or Finland.
Choose, chose, chosen. What are the three forms of choose?
The three forms of choose are choose, chose, chosen.
Who chose the shoes you're wearing?
I chose the shoes I'm wearing myself.
Have you chosen where you're going to go for your next holiday?
No, I haven't chosen where I'm going to go for my next holiday.
Force, persuasion. Do you believe that more is gained by force than by persuasion?
No, I don't believe that more is gained by force than by persuasion.
Bow. Is a bow any use without arrows?
No, a bow isn't any use without arrows.
Natural. Is it natural for cats to spend a lot of their time sleeping?
Yes, it's natural for cats to spend a lot of their time sleeping.
Invent. What would you like to invent?
I'd like to invent a time machine.
Speech. Have you ever made a speech in public?
Yes, I've made a speech in public.
Quite a few. What does the expression quite a few mean?
The expression quite a few means a fairly large number of.
Give me an example, please.
There were quite a few people at the party.
Draw, drew, drawn. Recognizable. What are the three forms of draw?
The three forms of draw are draw, drew, drawn.
If you drew this table across the floor, do you think it'd leave a mark behind it?
Yes, if I drew this table across the floor, I think it'd leave a mark behind it.
If you drew my face, do you suppose it'd be recognizable?
Yes, if I drew your face, I suppose it'd be recognizable.
Why?
Because I can draw well.
About how long ago is it since everything was drawn by horses?
It's about 100 years since everything was drawn by horses.
Pass.
Lesson
Go
99.
away.
At last. Lastly. When do we use the expression at last?
We use the expression at last when we feel that we have been waiting for a long time for something to happen, and then it happens.
Give me an example, please.
Ah, here you are at last. Where have you been?
When do we use the word lastly?
We use the word lastly to say the last thing in a list.
Give me an example, please.
We need to paint this office, buy some new computers, and lastly, get better desks for everyone.
Which word can we use instead of at last or lastly?
We can use the word finally instead of at last or lastly.
Give me an example of the word finally, please.
Ah, finally, here's the bus. She finished her work, turned off the computer, put on her jacket, and finally left the office.
Claim, lawyer, damages, property, lost property office, take someone to court. If I claimed to be a millionaire, would you believe me?
No, if you claim to be a millionaire, I wouldn't believe you.
Why not?
Because you wouldn't be teaching here now.
If someone hit your car and it was definitely their fault, could you claim damages against them?
Yes, if someone hit my car and it was definitely their fault, I could claim damages against them.
If they rejected your claim, what did you do?
If they rejected my claim, I'd take them to court.
If a relation of yours died and left you some land or other property, where do you have to go in order to claim it legally?
If a relation of mine died and left me some land or other property, I'd have to go to a lawyer's office in order to claim it legally.
Where must you go to claim things that you've left on the train?
I must go to the lost property office to claim things I've left on the train.
Youth. The youth. A youth. Do old people often talk about what life was like in their youth?
Yes, old people often talk about what life was like in their youth.
Do you think the youth of today are better educated than the youth of 100 years ago?
No, I don't think the youth of today are better educated than the youth of 100 years ago. I think they're worse educated.
What kind of work can a youth do better than an old man?
A youth can do physical work better than an old man.
Clauses. Group. Conjunction. What's a clause?
A clause is any group of words with a subject and a main verb.
What's a conjunction?
A conjunction is a word that joins clauses together to make long sentences.
Give me an example of a sentence that contains two clauses joined together by a conjunction, please.
I love chocolate because it tastes so good.
Main clause. Dependent or subordinate clause. To make sense. What's the difference between a main clause and a dependent clause?
The difference between a main clause and a dependent clause is that a main clause contains the main message of the sentence, whereas a dependent clause contains other information.
Which is the main clause in this sentence? If I don't sleep enough, I feel tired.
I feel tired is the main clause in that sentence.
And which is the dependent clause?
If I don't sleep enough is the dependent clause.
Give me a sentence starting with a conjunction, please.
When I visit my mum, I'll tell her the news. If the weather is good, we can go for a walk in the park.
Which conjunctions cannot start a sentence?
The conjunctions and, or, and but cannot start a sentence.
Descend, descent. From this floor of the building, do we have to descend to go outside?
Yes, from this floor of the building, we have to descend to go outside.
What's the noun of the verb descend?
The noun of the verb descend is descent.
Holy. Jerusalem. Is Jerusalem a holy place for many people in the world?
Yes, Jerusalem is a holy place for many people in the world.
Confess. If you are not able to do something, do you think it's better to confess the fact?
Yes, if I'm not able to do something, I think it's usually better to confess the fact.
Shore. Which is safer, to build a house on the seashore or on the shore of a lake?
It's safer to build a house on the shore of a lake.
Why?
Because the weather is not so rough.
Lesson 100.
Athlete.
Lay, laid, laid. Lay an egg. Lay the table. What's another word we can use instead of put?
Another word we can use instead of put is lay.
What are the three forms of lay?
The three forms of lay are lay, laid, laid.
What did I lay on the table at the beginning of the lesson?
You laid your books on the table at the beginning of the lesson.
About how many times a year do most birds lay their eggs?
Most birds lay their eggs about once a year.
Who lays the table in your house?
I lay the table in my house.
Single. Go through. Entire. Do you think it's possible for a person to go through his entire life without telling a single lie?
No, I don't think it's possible for a person to go through his entire life without telling a single lie.
Why not?
Because every now and again it may be necessary to tell a small lie.
About how wide is a single bed?
A single bed is about 3 feet or 90 centimetres wide.
When travelling, is it usually cheaper to buy 2 single tickets or a return ticket?
When travelling, it's usually cheaper to buy a return ticket.
Fought. What are the 3 forms of fight?
The 3 forms of fight are fight, fought, fought.
What countries has your country fought against in the past?
My country has fought against Germany, Spain and France in the past.
Verb plus object plus adjective. Give me an example of the construction make plus object plus adjective.
Work makes us tired.
Give me an example of the construction keep plus object plus adjective.
Exercise keeps you healthy.
Look after. Which would you rather look after for a week, a baby or a horse?
I'd rather look after a baby for a week than a horse.
Why?
Because I don't know anything about horses.
Behave, behaviour, watch over, interview. Why is it that children so often don't know how to behave themselves when there are no adults to watch over them?
I think the reason children so often don't know how to behave themselves when there are no adults to watch over them is that they don't know the difference between right and wrong.
What happens to children who behave badly?
Children who behave badly are sometimes sent to bed early by their parents.
Are people usually on their best behaviour during job interviews?
Yes, people are usually on their best behaviour during job interviews.
Break into. Inform. If you were walking home late at night and saw a man trying to break into a shop, would you inform the police?
Yes, if I were walking home late at night and saw a man trying to break into a shop, I'd inform the police.
Kind. Kindness. If you were carrying some heavy shopping bags and someone offered to carry one for you, what could you say?
If I were carrying some heavy shopping bags and someone offered to carry one for me, I could say, "Thank you, that's very kind of you."
If one behaves with kindness to another person, does that person usually return the kindness?
Yes, if one behaves with kindness to another person, that person usually returns the kindness.
Far. A long way. Too far. Distant. Give me first a negative and then a positive answer to the following questions. Is it far from here to the next town?
No, it isn't far from here to the next town. Yes, it's a long way from here to the next town.
Did you walk very far yesterday?
No, I didn't walk very far yesterday. Yes, I walked a long way yesterday.
Give me an example of the expression too far, please.
It's too far to walk to the station. Let's get a taxi.
When do we generally use the word distant instead of far?
We generally use the word distant instead of far as an adjective before a noun.
Give me an example, please.
I could see some sheep in a distant field.
Do you have any distant relations living in another country?
Yes, I have some distant relations living in another country.
If you could look into the far distant future, what would you like to see there for yourself and for the world generally?
If I could look into the far distant future, I'd like to see happiness for myself and for the world generally.
Throughout. Choice. If you had had the choice of being born in any period throughout history, which period would you have chosen?
If I'd had the choice of being born in any period throughout history, I'd have chosen after the Second World War.
Why?
Because the world became more comfortable to live in.
Have you ever gone throughout the entire winter without catching a single cold?
No, I've never gone throughout the entire winter without catching a single cold.
Do you believe that people are all more or less the same throughout the world, or do you believe there are real basic differences?
I believe that people are all more or less the same throughout the world.
Official. What do we mean by a government official?
By a government official, we mean someone who works for the government, usually with a certain amount of power.
What do we mean by the official language of a country?
By the official language of a country, we mean the language that is used by the government and in schools in countries where a number of different languages are spoken.
Priest. Would you like to be a priest?
No, I wouldn't like to be a priest.
Preach. What do we mean when we say that some people don't practice what they preach?
When we say that some people don't practice what they preach, we mean that they give advice to other people about what is right, but they don't follow this advice themselves.
Kingdom. United Kingdom. UK. Northern Ireland. Wales. What is a kingdom?
A kingdom is a country which has a king or queen as its head.
Which countries does the United Kingdom include?
The United Kingdom includes England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales.
Pretty. Are there any pretty flowers growing outside this building?
No, there aren't any pretty flowers growing outside this building.
If you only got 5 hours sleep tonight, would you feel pretty tired tomorrow morning?
Yes, if I only got 5 hours sleep tonight, I'd feel pretty tired tomorrow morning.
Idiom 1. Hang on equals wait. What does the idiom hang on mean?
The idiom hang on means wait.
Give me an example, please.
Hang on a minute. I think I have his address in my book somewhere.
101. Relative clauses 1. Relative pronoun. Relate to. I have a black cat. I have a cat which is black. What is a relative clause?
A relative clause is a clause that we use to describe a noun.
Where do we put a relative clause?
We put a relative clause immediately after the noun it describes.
What do we call the words who, which, and that?
We call the words who, which, and that relative pronouns.
What's the difference between who, which, and that?
The difference between who, which, and that is that we use who for people, which for things and animals, and that for people, things, and animals.
Give me a sentence with a relative clause in it, please.
I know a man who lives in that street. The film that I saw yesterday was great.
Now I will say 2 sentences and I want you to join them together using a relative clause. Yesterday I saw a film. The film lasted for 3 hours.
Yesterday I saw a film that lasted for 3 hours.
Mary has a friend. Her friend lives on a boat.
Mary has a friend that lives on a boat.
I am reading a book. My mother gave me the book.
I am reading a book which my mother gave me.
The waiter dropped a tray. He was carrying the tray.
The waiter dropped the tray which he was carrying.
Proper, player, side, doorway. What is the proper number of players on each side for a game of football?
The proper number of players on each side for a game of football is 11.
Is it considered improper behaviour in this country for a man to go through a doorway in front of a woman?
Yes, it's considered improper behaviour in this country for a man to go through a doorway in front of a woman.
Backwards, forwards, sideways, upwards, downwards. What do the words backwards, forwards, sideways, etc. mean?
The words backwards, forwards, sideways, etc. mean towards the back, towards the front, towards the side, etc.
What am I doing?
You're moving backwards and forwards.
What am I doing?
You're moving sideways.
What's my hand doing?
Your hand's moving upwards and downwards.
Count the numbers in English from 10 to 15 backwards quickly.
15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10.
What's she doing?
She's counting the numbers in English from 10 to 15 backwards quickly.
Look up at the ceiling, please. Is she looking upwards or downwards?
She's looking upwards.
Irritate. What kind of music irritates you?
The kind of music that irritates me is rap music.
When you're in a restaurant, do you get irritated if people at another table are talking very loudly?
Yes. When I'm in a restaurant, I get irritated if people at another table are talking very loudly.
As a rule. As a rule, do people in your town go to the cinema more on Saturday evenings than on Sunday evenings, or vice versa?
As a rule, people in my town go to the cinema more on Saturday evenings than on Sunday evenings.
Waste. What do we do with waste paper?
We throw waste paper away.
Do you think it's a waste of time learning a foreign language which is little spoken in the world?
No, I don't think it's a waste of time learning a foreign language which is little spoken in the world.
What kind of things do you consider to be a waste of time?
The kind of things I consider to be a waste of time are watching television and sleeping too much.
What kind of things do you consider to be a waste of money?
The kind of things I consider to be a waste of money are cigarettes and alcohol.
Why?
Because they aren't necessary.
Do you ever waste your money?
Yes, I sometimes waste my money.
On what?
Clothes and alcohol.
Do you ever waste your time?
Yes, I sometimes waste my time.
How?
By sleeping too much.
Use of contractions. When do we use contractions and when don't we use them?
We use contractions in conversation, but not often in writing, especially formal writing.
Terrible. What do you think's the most terrible thing that can happen to someone?
I think the most terrible thing that can happen to someone is to die slowly in great pain.
Leadership. Would you like to have the leadership of your country in your hands?
Yes, I'd like to have the leadership of my country in my hands.
Why?
Because I think I'd do a good job.
Market. Do you have a market in the middle of your hometown?
Yes, we have a market in the middle of my hometown.
Wonder. Wonderful. So many. Pyramid. Do you ever wonder what'll happen to you in the future?
Yes, I sometimes wonder what'll happen to me in the future.
What do you suppose will happen to you in the future?
I suppose that I will get married and travel the world.
Have you ever wondered why some people are rich whilst others are poor?
Yes, I've sometimes wondered why some people are rich whilst others are poor.
Why are children more often filled with wonder than adults.
I think the reason children are more often filled with wonder than adults is that so many things are new to them.
Name me one of the 7 wonders of the world.
The pyramids are one of the 7 wonders of the world.
What's the most wonderful thing that has ever happened to you in your life?
The most wonderful thing that has ever happened to me in my life was when I travelled America.
Idiom 2. Fed up equals bored and tired. What does the idiom fed up mean?
The idiom fed up means bored and tired.
Give me an example, please.
I'm just fed up with everything.